Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Olivia Reiner. I am joined by Jim Ozarski, and we are inside today for Packers Chat. We just wrapped up locker room, and we haven't been with you guys since Thursday, so it's been a little while. So I'm sure you have lots of burning questions you want to get off your chest, and thankfully, we are here for you. We're here to listen to you. If you don't have a friend or someone with you, we will be your friends. We're happy to be your friends. Friends that want to talk Packers.
Right.
So, yes. Let's start with injury updates because that's always something that people seem to care about.
Right.
And I guess if you're a Packers fan or the Packers, good news is that there really weren't any injury updates.
Yeah, I mean it's linebacker Oren Burks, torn pec muscle. We know he won't be available until October anyway. Wide receiver Darius Shepard, who's been dealing with a hamstring since basically the last preseason game. The only two guys totally out. So Bakhtiari, Balaga limited today, but I think at this point, this team is about as healthy as you're going to be, which is not a whole lot of teams can say that even after just 1 week of play.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody in the chat. Lots of you filing in. Hello, Paul. Hello, Marcos from Peru. Oh my goodness.
Always international.
Yes. People from all over the place. Love that. Hopefully it's not raining where you are because it's raining here.
Pretty wet in Wisconsin.
Paul wants to know, any word on BJ Goodson? He's practicing. He's been practicing this week, and it sounds like, according to Matt LaFleur, he'll be playing in this upcoming game, and not just on special teams, but actually in the defense.
Yeah, and I think, the fact that he was active after basically a special teams walkthrough shows how much the team trusted his ability on that level. And to not have any penalties in Chicago, for as good as those guys can be, or even just and kick, blocking, right? I expect him to play because you've got a much different offense with the Vikings. Clearly, Mike Zimmer and his group want to run the ball way more than Matt Nagy was ever going to. So I think having a more traditional inside linebacker as opposed to just Raven Green, probably more important Sunday against Minnesota. So, I'd look for 93.
Yeah, Tom Silverstein had a pretty interesting column over on PackersNews.com talking about the success of the defense against the Bears and how that may or may not translate over to the Vikings. What do the Packers need to do? What does Mike Pettin need to do to come to week 2 with a brand new game plan, more or less?
Yeah, I think so, because it's look, he basically dared Matt Nagy to throw it, or to run it, excuse me, by bringing Raven Green down and having all those defensive backs, and he probably knew Matt Nagy was never going to run the ball, even if they were successful. That's just not how that guy's wired as a play caller. I think you'll have to see the opposite this week, Olivia, because look, Mike Zimmer has either made one offensive coordinator resign, he's fired another one. This is his fourth guy in 4 seasons. And why is that? Because Mike Zimmer wants to play defense and run the ball. So I think it's going to be the opposite. I think you're going to see Mike Pettin sort of challenge Kirk Cousins and those receivers. And while on one hand, Packers fans might be like, oh no, they remember Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen running around Lambeau Field last year. I think Mike Pettin has a lot of confidence in his coverage team, so I can see more of an emphasis around the line of scrimmage Sunday.
All right, something to keep an eye on. Let me take a look at our comments. Hello, everybody.
So it'll be interesting as you look for that, Olivia, just to see how Mike Pettin adjusts week to week in this way, because I don't think last year he could do all the things he wanted to. We thought this would be the case going forward, so as long as all of his guys are healthy, or as healthy as they can be, like we might even see Ty Summers a little bit more Sunday.
Tyler was wondering, I guess he just showed up. Who are they talking about? We were talking about BJ Goodson. That's how we got into this topic. So it might be interesting to throw a wild card in there. The Vikings obviously don't know what to look for in Goodson, or even in a second-year Mike Pettin defense that has a second true inside linebacker. Perhaps that could work in the Packers' advantage.
Yeah, they know. Look, when you only throw it 10 times in the National Football League, clearly what you put on tape is that you have an an emphasis on running the ball. Now watch this. Gary Kubiak and Kevin Stefanski are going to come out and throw it 6 straight times, right? But yeah, I think that base 3-4 look or something thereabouts, we might see that more this week. Probably, Dallas might be done Dallas, right, with Ezekiel Elliott. So it's probably a more run-heavy look that I imagine we'll see, Sunday. Interesting.
So switching over to the offensive front, a lot of people asking a similar question. I always lose the question that I find originally. Let's see. Eric, there we go. Wants to know, any concern about Aaron Rodgers' first game in the new scheme? He was the first one to admit that it didn't go the way that he had hoped for himself, and he said that he spoke to Matt LaFleur after the game and said, I'm going to be better, I have to be better. And Davante Adams today sort of piggybacked on that sentiment, saying that I wasn't good enough, and I know that. He knows he's a big part of this offense. Both of them are big parts of the offense. Aaron Jones is a big part of the offense, and he was relatively quiet. The run game in general was relatively quiet. So what needs to change heading into week 2?
Yeah, the Rodgers thing is, look, when you get to this age, you can't just assume everyone's Tom Brady, right? So that always has to be part of the objective analysis of Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, all these guys, right? You can't just assume they're going to be great until they're over 40. So yes, we always kind of have to be aware of just general decline. Now, in terms of concern, to me, Olivia, I think this is week 1 for the offense. Davante Adams, 8 targets, none in the second half. Clearly, him and Rodgers were not on the same page early, which is really weird. So I think if we see the same thing, then maybe it's like, ooh, where are they at, and is this really clicking at all? I don't anticipate that, but we have to see it, right? Sure. You can't just assume it at this point.
Let's see, Michael, going back over to the defense, wants to know, will Tony Brown have a bounce-back game? He had a couple plays sort of on longer balls near the side. It was the same sideline where he was not able to beat his receiver. What would a bounce-back game do for Tony Brown, undrafted free agent who came in last year? What would that sort of do for him in this defense? He's been given sort of a bigger role this year.
Right. It's interesting because I'm sure Tony would tell you that he didn't give up a touchdown, so what's there to bounce back from, right? But I get your point when the Bears didn't have many big plays and 2 of them came with 28 in coverage. I think, look, I think in his case, if he's put in the same role, if Kevin King is still sort of being worked back in gradually like he was against Chicago, frankly, it would be just don't get beat over the top where you're trying to catch one of those guys on his way to the end zone. I know that sounds bad, but look, the way this league is formatted, with the rules being what they are, teams are going to complete long passes. So, I think those stood out because the Bears didn't do very many of them. But look, you've got Jair Alexander on one end, so the other side's going to get picked on until Kevin King's back. And honestly, even when Kevin King comes back, they'll probably, of the 2, they'll see if he, is up to speed. So, I don't know. I think if you're Tony Brown, I think you just kind of do what you do. I don't recall any penalties on his part that were egregious. So in terms of coverage, I guess, I'm sure he'll say better position or whatever, but, I guess that's all he can do. Just a bounce back game would be not allowing that, but I don't know how realistic that is to ask for.
Sure. So speaking of things that are maybe not realistic to ask for against a Bears defense, that was a very smooth transition there.
Very smooth.
The offensive line. Yeah. So Scott wants to know, how can the offensive line be better in week 2? The offensive line, like I said, had to face some very esteemed Bears defensemen this past week. Aaron Rodgers was getting hit and knocked around a lot this past game. What did the offensive line do? Is it the nature of the Bears defense is just so good, or are there still some kinks being worked out there?
Right. I'll go with what Brian Bulaga told me after the game, Olivia, which was, yeah, the Bears are good, but so are half the defenses or the front sevens for half the schedule. I mean, Minnesota included. So he's like, that can't be a reason for 2.1 yards per carry, 5 sacks, or however many quarterback hits. A couple things. I think, one, Rodgers has to play better, meaning there were some opportunities for him to get rid of the ball that would have prevented certain hits. Even if those are incompletions, at the end of the day, the offensive line, quote unquote, looks better because the ball got out and the quarterback didn't take a shot, right? So I think that's part of it. And then run game wise, we'll see. It wasn't great. I'm curious if Danny Vitale will see a little more action. I mean, he's not like a traditional thumping fullback, but he still is an extra body back there. He wasn't really used very often, more in favor of 2 tight end sets. So, honestly, I'm not going to put a total yardage number, Olivia, but I mean, they've got to get to 4 yards a carry. I think that has to be a minimum,
sure,
right?
It's a low bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so too. Let's see what we got. Interesting question. Randy wants to know, is Alan Lazard healthy enough to return kicks? Has he ever been a kick returner?
I don't know.
Is there a need?
Yeah.
Perhaps he's asking about Darius Shepard.
Well, yeah. Again, but I don't know, I guess, why that would come up. Trevor Davis, as far as we know, is totally healthy. And when he's healthy, he is clearly the best kick returner on the team. I mean, Darius Shepard showed some nice ability. No doubt that's what helped him make the team should Trevor Davis get hurt. But, I think Trevor Davis is the guy there. So whether it's Lazard or Shepard or Jair Alexander, I think until Trevor Davis is injured, quite frankly, I mean, he's going to be the guy. And he's proven, if given a chance to return, he can make something special happen. So it's just that the Bears punted really well, covered really well, and obviously kickoffs now, I think that's just such a crapshoot if you actually get to return one.
Right, and that wasn't really
the
case.
The Bears really didn't give them an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of receivers, so we our friend here, Jason, wants to know who will be the next breakout wide receiver other than Davante Adams. He points out that it seems like Marquez Valdes-Scantling has a slight edge over Geronimo Allison right now.
Yeah, just in the sense that when they run 2 receiver sets, it's Adams and Valdes-Scantling, right? So in those personnel packages, Valdes-Scantling is the number 2, but I think, Olivia, I don't think there's a breakout receiver. That's not how this offense is designed. I mean, if you guys, go back and look through Pro Football Reference or NFL.com, whatever stat, site you like to use, and look at the 16 Falcons, the 49ers the last couple years, LA Rams the first 2 years of McVay. The second receiver is okay. It's a very democratic offense, basically, is what I'm saying. Tight ends and running backs are supposed to catch a lot of footballs. So, if you're a fantasy player and you have one of these other guys, it's a total roll of the dice on whether you're going to get anything for it. It's Adams, and then it's supposed to be distributed around. It's really hard to say that there's a breakout type of guy.
And if you look back at the stats from week 1, you'll notice that there are so many receivers listed as guys that were at the very least targeted. But
right, and so Allison, for instance, was totally non-existent. He was in the frame when Jimmy Graham caught his touchdown, but the way this is supposed to work is literally Geronimo Allison could have 8 catches for 110 yards and a score on Sunday after having none against the Bears. And you know what I mean? So I guess Valdes-Scantling is the deep shot guy. I think and if you see Trevor Davis, he had the 1 catch for 28 yards. Those guys, Matt LaFleur is guard against tendencies there, but those are your deep guys, so maybe they have the sexy highlight plays. But in terms of someone having an 80 catch season, I just don't see it.
So following up on that, Jason asks how much of the new look offense will be rallied around Jimmy Graham and the tight ends group in general. I mean, I turned to you, or I turned to Tom, I turned to somebody during the game toward the end, like, are all 3 tight ends supposed to be on like the stat sheet right now as being receivers? I mean, every single tight end, minus injured Jay Sternberger, which who doesn't count because he was out. But every tight end on the roster had a target or had a reception in the game, and that wasn't something that we had seen, especially from Martinez Lewis, who had, I believe, 2 receptions, which is one shy of his max
season total
last year. So how much of it, that I feel like that just goes right hand in hand with what you were saying about the tight ends are getting as involved as these receivers are. Yeah,
I think so. And that's, I mean, the fact that Jimmy Graham produced will only build Rodgers' confidence, his confidence. I mean, it sounds weird to say that about a couple of all-pros, but it matters, especially, you know, Graham coming off the year he did. Lewis, too. I mean, you were in a long conversation with Martinez Lewis the other day, or earlier in the week, I guess, and, you know, that's one of the reasons he came back. And he has caught the ball in the past. I mean, this is not like some shock. You know, it's just, I guess, last year he just wasn't using. Obviously, we know what Robert Tonyan could potentially be. So, no, I think seeing all 3 on the stat sheet, even if it's just 1 catch to 4 catches, that matters. And yeah, that's I mean, that's a big part of this offense.
So we talk about the offense improving for this upcoming week. Josh points out that not running the clock to 1 second every snap would also help the offense. What did you make of the way that the offense was able to get out of the huddle and get to the line of scrimmage, and for the play to get in on time, and for the offense to look comfortable and move quickly? Did you feel like that speed was where it needed to be? And I feel like as I'm asking this question, I'm feeling like the answer is probably it's not.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, it didn't look good. The results weren't good. And it didn't feel good in that way. Like, I mean, I mean, let's just go back to that Rams offense in L.A. For as good as Mike Pettine's defense was in the first half last year, I mean, second half, that's what it's supposed to look like. Packers fans remember, what was it, C.J. Beathard pushed the Packers to the limit here at Lambeau Field for the 49ers. And those are a bunch of dudes who I don't even remember their names that were moving the ball. Like, that's what it's supposed to look like when it's moving quickly. And even with Aaron Rodgers, look, I mean, the guy said first thing after the game is he's got to be better with that. So, yeah, it's getting – I don't know if it's so much about, like, the 2 seconds left on the play clock thing. I think it's getting out where you have – you know, the ability to feel like it's supposed to, and we don't know what that is. You know, like maybe, you know, especially in certain situations, Aaron Rodgers is given the leeway to change things or move things around, and they want him to do that. But it even when he did that against Chicago, it didn't work. You know what I mean? So I think that's. Yeah, it's got to feel better. I don't want to put a number on the play clock with that, but I think we'll know it when we see it, and we definitely didn't see it Thursday.
For sure. I'll take 1 or 2 more questions here. This one is a quick one, and yet again, I lost it. But I remember what it said. No. Someone had asked, I apologize, I don't have your name right in front of me. Someone had asked what the Packers are going to do about the open spot on the practice squad. They brought up Alan Lazard last week, and they have not filled that spot yet, to my knowledge, now that I'm sitting here.
Yeah, no, I can't. I guess good on you for thinking about that. I mean, I think they probably just, it's like anything. They're either waiting for the right person to be released, clear waivers. You know, obviously to release one of their own guys off the 53, they have to wait through that process of other teams potentially claiming them and re-signing them. So really, and honestly, like we started this chat with how healthy this team is, with just 2 players not being able to participate to some degree. So really, in that sense, you're not really like losing much. I hate to say that, like you don't really need the extra bodies for reps at that point. So My guess is Brian Gutekunst is just sort of playing the field a little bit.
Yeah, all right. Something, good reminder for us
Yeah.
to keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah.
Last question. Jason is firing away with great questions today. So, Jason, thank you very much. He says, how much of an improvement have we seen from the secondary and Blake Martinez, I guess, as well? From the offseason to this point, how much growth have we seen personally? It's an interesting question.
I guess for me, after one game, the thing that stood out was Darnell Savage Jr.'s game speed. Because it's one thing to clock something wearing tights at the combine that you train for. It's another thing to play in the Big Ten and be chasing around those guys. It's another to get put on the NFL field and actually see it happen, right? And I think that definitely showed up and is a real thing. We didn't really see that in practice because they're playing against their own guys. Like, you're just not going to let it loose like that, especially from his position. So I think from off-season to week one, that would be like the biggest eye-opener for me because this is a really talented coverage group. So I expected what we saw. Adrian Amos was signed to not mess up and to really solidify things, and that's what we saw. So they're supposed to be good. So I guess for me it was more Savage Jr. Like, wow, that is like legit. That's not just projection or he could be this way.
And going back to what Jason was saying, specifically asking about Blake Martinez, it's one game, and he has a lot to prove for the rest of the season if he would like to sign a contract extension with the Packers. But after one game, he was able to fill the stat sheet probably as much as he would have liked because given last season, I don't think he was necessarily super impressed, but I think he led the team in tackles this past game. I think he did have a sack too.
Yeah, he did have the first sack of the game. I think that's so Blake. What he said his issue was a year ago was with the revolving door of guys next to him. Was always sort of trying to basically be Superman, and I see this guy over here is not in the right spot, or I see this lineman here's not in the right spot. Let me try. And he's like, too many times we both were wrong then, because he was trying to make up for. So basically, he sort of dialed in on himself, which sounds goofy to say, but honestly, it's true. So, look, he had 5 sacks last year. I would imagine Mike Pettin would like him to get to that number again. We'll see if he can, get his hands on interception or create a fumble. I think that's the one thing they want from him, since he's one of the rare guys that's on the field for almost all the plays. So we'll see as that goes if he can translate that into big plays, because that's what he thinks. He thinks if he's not so worried about everyone else, it'll allow him to be better getting where he needs to be, and maybe that can create some turnovers.
All right, guys, an interesting conversation. We appreciate your questions. Thank you for joining us.
Nobody asked me what I was drinking.
No.
So they'll have to wait till next time.
I think they're just used to it, though. I think they can guess. If you know Jim at all, you probably know what was in the cup at 5 o'clock, whatever, 5:17 in the evening. Jim's still drinking a certain beverage that people typically consume in the morning.
Yeah.
At least I consume. I try to go one cup of it, this unnamed, whatever. Anyway, okay, guys, thank you for joining us. We will be back with you hopefully tomorrow, definitely tomorrow, and then, of course, we'll be with you guys before and after the game, as we always are.